All right, so officially welcome everybody to our webinar this month, Running a Successful Practice or Group Ride. I'm Sean Warren. I'm on the MiSCA Board of Directors. I'm the President and the League Director for MiSCA. We've probably by now you've heard my voice, so we may have met in person. But I work day to day in the operations as League Director to make sure registration is going and that things are moving forward throughout the entire year. And then on the board, I work as the president, more like financially and organizationally of like how the organization is going to grow and move forward in future years. As far as today's webinar goes, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions box of GoToWebinar. We shouldn't be able to hear any of the regular attendees, just the panelists that I'm joined by. So if you do have questions, please let us know. And then we'll get moving. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to go through some quick intros with TJ and Nick. Then we're going to get into kind of the meat of ride planning and execution for your group rides or practices, some additional ideas and some tips on having fun with your team, not just doing the riding stuff. We'll also do Q&A with Nick and TJ after that. And then I have some just kind of MiSCA housekeeping stuff that I will talk about at the end. And we'll do a separate Q&A at the end as well that'll just be kind of MiSCA oriented. And we can do some coaching stuff in there too if you want to. But I thought that you might have more questions at the beginning when it's fresh, when TJ and Nick are giving us some of their ideas. I'm going to go ahead and jump over and talk about TJ real quick. So TJ Tyrrell is the head coach of the Brighton team. And he's been on board for a while now, and I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself additionally.
Hi, TJ here. I've been running the Brighton team. This is 5th year now, and looking forward to sharing some of the lessons learned along the way.
Great. How many members do you have this year, TJ?
We have 67 that have turned in forms. Not all of them have actually decided to participate yet. And over the years, I've learned that some of them, because we operate as a club out of the school, they sign up early, and then once they start thinking about going back to school and things going on there, then they say, oh, hey, it's got this club going on, and then we hear from them, and we have riders that join throughout the summer months. We start riding in the middle of May, towards the end of the school year, and finish up after the last MiSCA races. We started out with nine kids there's 9 student athletes that were regular riders, and now we, on a normal practice, have about 32, 33 riders and 12 or 14 coaches.
Very cool. All right, let me jump over to Nick real quick. So Nick is the head coach over at Lake Orion. He's been trying to get that team going for quite a few years now. It was happening, and then it wasn't, and now it's happening again in a big way. So I'll go ahead and introduce Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick Shaskos. I teach 6th grade science at Oakview Middle School. I've been running just a small club out of the middle school there since 2008, and MiSCA came along in 2012. And every time I wasn't really serious about racing, it was more kind of a fun club. But every time we'd have a good, really strong kid, I would take them out for the races. And, it was just cool to see the atmosphere there with the kids in their jerseys and the team atmosphere. And at that point, I always thought, our district needed this. And, because we have such a great community of trails and recreation areas to do this. So I always thought that we needed to do this. So finally last year I took the jump. And, we went district-wide, and our first year we had 24 racers, and this year so far we have 35 signed up. So we're moving along here, scooting along.
That's good. And then Nick, don't you have like you did like some kind of club thing right earlier in the year, and now it's like your MiSCA team, like you kind of evolved it from early in the year, kind of group rides into more of the team.
We started, I like to call it my farm system. It was geared more towards skill building and, the beginner kids. We started in early May, and it was really heavy on skills and really focused towards those beginner kids and kids that have never mountain biked before. And the hope was to transition those kids into the team, once we started in July. So we had the skills building team club through May and June, and then we started team practice in July. And a lot of our race kids were also a part of that club. So
yeah, I think that's a good model.
So
I was say I think the Huron Valley.
We did get a few. We got a few of those kids in. We didn't get all of them. I was hoping to get more of those kids, but we did get a few of them.
All right. Well, cool. We're going to kind of keep this light and free-flowing as we kind of run through the agenda items. Nick and TJ will chime in on the areas that they want to talk about, and I'll just kind of facilitate here as we go down each one to make sure we hit all of the points. But kind of our first area here is about planning your ride. So before you get out there, what kind of needs to be done, or at least before you get on the trail, or some things you need to think about to organize before you have your group ride. So the first one is delegating jobs, and I think, Nick, you had brought this one up, so if you want to start with this one.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a lot of kids, things just become hectic. They're riding their bikes everywhere in parking lots, on streets, just cars everywhere. It's really kind of crazy as far as that goes. So, delegating jobs to the kids and the parents kind of really helps things to move along and get practice going. There's attendance to take, there's check-in, we do bike checks, we do stretching, we break up into groups. So, giving kids those jobs to do really helps things get going. So, for attendance, we have number plates, not number plates, but just introduction plates that Sean had given us. So they write their names on their plates. It's like a number plate for racing, except it says, "Hello, my name is," and then the kids write their name on it. So we have a kid that hands out those in the beginning. Then once they do that, they find a partner, and they have to do their bike checks to make sure that they're safe. In the meantime, other coaches are going around and making sure that, the kids are being safe. So, delegating is a big part of just getting through that beginning phase of arrival when the kids have to. Otherwise, you'll be there all day before practice starts. The actual practice starts.
Yep, and Nick, you touched on a whole bunch of things I think we're going to cover even more in depth, but I think the idea is that before you think you have to take on all of these tasks yourself, try to think about who else that you have in your core group maybe can take on some of those things. Even like a strong student rider who's been with you a few years might be able to help, like you said, hand out number plates. That's pretty simple, or helping teach some of how to do the bike checks and things like that.
Yeah. And it's a lot of it's the really small stuff that even takes a while because you have a lot of kids that you can delegate to the kids. It's pretty easy to do, and it gives them something to do, and it gets you through practice quicker.
Anything to add to that, TJ?
That's a great. Yeah, I was going to say that's a great point. I've got a couple, actually 3 captains that are designated, and each from some of the years, the school years, a senior, a junior, and a sophomore. And I think that's a good format. We usually have some newer kids coming in as freshmen, some that haven't ridden before, and we look for a little bit of leadership from some of them. They apply to the position, and they get some of these jobs that Nick was mentioning. Getting things organized at the beginning. So it's good to have them, and of course, it's always great to have coaches that you can give some things to around some of the rides, like a particular skill that have a coach focus on for the whole group, and they spend a little time to prepare for that.
Cool. So that might actually take us into the grouping riders, which is one of the items that you had brought up, TJ. I guess you could just kind of segue into that from almost grouping your coaches into where their skills are, into grouping your riders and just based on their abilities too. Yeah.
So as far as grouping riders go, when we were 9 student athletes strong, it was pretty easy to segregate them into a couple groups and chase them around with a couple coaches that we had. With the sometimes 40 riders that we have today, getting them grouped into appropriate age and skill and sometimes gender was becoming more and more challenging. So came up with a way to do that. Actually, it was one of our captains, Alex Day, suggested maybe we could give everybody a color. I was going to give them a colored tag. He suggested colored electrical tape because it's comes off the bike's easy. You can change it if you need to, and so we started just putting a piece of colored tape on the handlebars of the riders, and we've got 7 groups now that ride regularly. Primarily, it's based on skill and endurance. The more advanced groups go longer and further, and tackle the more technical pieces of trail, and the less advanced groups, even down to the novices, some of which are experiencing dirt for the first time, are in the less advanced group where we go fewer miles and tackle less technical trail. And then the coaches also have the differences in skills and endurance as well, and so coaches get matched up with some of these groups as well. Gender, don't normally think to, and didn't in the past think to group riders by gender, but we've got several female student athletes this year, and sometimes they just like to ride together and have it be a more social type of activity rather than really focused on skills at some of the rides. So sometimes we'll group the girls together and have them focus on something special and give them some extra time to talk about their rides and enjoy the camaraderie. So that color system has worked out pretty good, and then coaches can give me feedback and have riders move from one group to another, or the riders themselves can talk to a coach and say, hey, I'd like to move up, or hey, this group is really getting too fast and I've not been practicing as much as some they have, and I'd like to go down a group. So we've had riders go both directions, and it keeps them with a group that is pretty well matched with their level of competence on the bike.
Cool. And I think Nick, and I'm just hearing this from like the third hand, I think from before, was, don't you guys have like some kind of like checklist for when riders are like ready to move up to a different level, or was that something that was in development?
Yeah, we started with that because this is the first year that club, the farm system as I call it, was in place. So we thought maybe a skills checklist, a rubric would be a good idea to split them up into groups, and it's developed, and I can share that too. It's far from perfect, but I'd love to share it. But we found out that a lot of the kids were complaining because there was some mismatches there, and it's really subjective, I guess, to who's judging the skill. So it does need to be reworked a little bit, but we ended up doing time trials is what we ended up doing, and it seemed to work a little bit better. So we set about a 2.5-mile course, and they had to go at race pace, and we split up our groups into groupings that way, and we gave them names. We called them. We broke them up into 4 groups. Call them the shredders, the ultimate, the extremes, and the radicals. So we broke them up that way by name, by group name. But I love the color tape idea too. I think I might steal that from you, TJ. And that way we can tell who's in what group.
And they can tell. I mean, the students always, well, what group are you in?
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember who I rode with last time, So it works out for them well, too.
Yeah. And I have students complain, well, my skills, why am I in this group? My skills are really good. Your skills are really good, but you're kind of dragging behind a little bit. So, it's definitely fluid. So you're not stuck in, you're never stuck in the group.
Right.
It's always fluid.
Endurance develops and skills develop, and they move around based on that.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes the groups will probably move as well, right? So one group may grow, or it gets to a level where, the whole group dynamic is changing a little bit as they grow together.
Yeah, and we found out, we have a really big ultimate group, and we found out that we had to separate them into an A and B group too, because there was a clear-cut difference between them. So we ended up doing that.
Cool. TJ, how about coaches support?
Yeah, this group thing really kind of segues into that. So, it's always a bit of a toss of the dice as to how many riders you're going to have at any given practice. They get vacations, family things, other sports that they do. Some are, regulars that you can count on them being there every single practice, and others, you might miss them a couple weeks in a row or even a month. And so we never know exactly how many students we're going to have in each group at each ride, and we don't know how many coaches we're going to have at each ride, because they have the same situation with conflicts and personal and work. And so this group system with the riders works out well, because sometimes we have a group that only has, instead of the normal 6 or 7, they only have 2 or 3, and then an adjacent group might be in the same situation where not everybody is attending. So we'll take a couple of similar capability rider groups and pull them together at times, and then in order to make a ride group. And then we've got coaches that are in the same situation. Sometimes we've got 6 coaches that show up for a practice. Sometimes we've got 12 that show up for a practice, and then assigning the coaches to the various groups becomes easy once you figure out what their capabilities are and how they like to ride and what they like to share with the student athletes. I got to say that Brighton Cycling is blessed with some really experienced mountain bike coaches. A few of them, several of them are racers currently or have been in the past, and they've got a lot of technical experience that they can share and race experience that they can share. And then we've got the other extreme where some of the parents that have students that are riding want to support the team, and they want to support by coming out and riding with the team. And, they're perfect match for some of the novice groups where, they're not fast, they don't have a lot of endurance, and neither do the student athletes that they're chasing. So we've really got a good mix, and we've never really had an issue in terms of getting riders and coaches matched up competently. So that, having experienced coaches and the parent support that parents come out and ride is actually superb. It's been terrific.
Hearing you say that, TJ, I mean, I would assume it's like this everywhere. We're in the exact same boat. Like, we have parents that have never ridden before but want to ride with their kids or are interested in riding. So, they sign up as a level 1 coach. We put them with the inexperienced younger kids, and they're happy. That this is exactly my level. Is a quote, is a quote that I got. This is perfect. And then you have, somebody who's way smarter than I am with all of this stuff, who will take the faster kids and the racing kids and have at it. So yeah. And one of the parents suggested, because we were caught, looking the other way one time with the number of coaches and who was going to take who. So one of the parents did suggest, and it's worked wonderfully, was that all the coaches go through all of our practices on SI Play and just check in. What's the button there? That you accept the invitation, I guess, is the button there for all the practices that they can make, and decline the invitation for the ones that they can't make. So, we have a good idea, because we have about 8 to 10 coaches as well. So we have a good idea going into practice that day how many coaches we're going to have before we even get there. So that's worked really, really well for us, to have the coaches.
That's great. Thanks for mentioning that, because I haven't leveraged SI Play extensively yet. Only now just starting to use it for communications to the coaching staff for various reasons. So I'll have to look into that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, Nick. Yeah, the SI Play tool is actually, it's a lot more powerful than what I think a lot of the teams are using it for yet, and they might grow into it as maybe some of the other parents have actually used it before and might be hungry for it. But yeah, you can set up all of your team practices. If you have a picnic or whatever else happening, you can put that all in there, and that way it's on everyone's calendar. It's in one area, as opposed to, I know we all kind of have, and MiSCA's guilty of this too, we have Facebook and Twitter and groups and all these different places we have to post, the website, all these places we have to post all these different things that can get kind of hard. So if you can give the parents or coaches one place to look that they know for sure everything will be there, that's it's a really good spot. And the pages look really nice too, actually, when they all come out.
Yeah, and that's something, going back to the jobs and delegating stuff, you can have a parent involved with all practices and all that stuff, and team going-ons and all that, all through SI Play. I'm really learning to like it a lot.
So the basics reinforcement, I'll go back to TJ. Is this pretty cut and dry, kind of as it's listed? It's kind of like choosing which of these you want to kind of do for a practice to focus on?
We'll oftentimes have a significant reminder for a particular skill at various practices, but overall we tend to cycle through these, and you have to. It's amazing how from one practice to another, or over the course of a few, that riders fall out of the habit of doing something they should be doing, and forget. And we learn kind of a hard lesson. Too much information is ineffective. Covering too many skills at any given time or any given practice is ineffective, and really just need to focus on maybe one particular skill, one particular message for a given practice, and try and reinforce that. Sometimes we can do it as a full group. Sometimes we have to split the group into two. Sometimes, the advanced riders groups will go off and hit the trail, and some of the less experienced rider groups will stay behind and work on a skill, or maybe one of those groups will be sent off to hit the trail, and a group stay behind, work on the skill, and then the first group come back off the trail and go through the same exercise. So when you got 30, 35 riders all wanting to share their personal experiences with each other and talk about their bikes and everything. It's difficult to keep their attention and give them a good good training or a good lesson. But when we found that when we do it, based on the individual rider groups that we've set up, that it's much more effective.
Yeah, I got nothing really to add there. It's just a matter of exactly like you said, you can't throw everything at them at one time because then they won't remember any of it. But you got to constantly, for me, it's constantly just riding with them and evaluating them while they're riding behind them, throwing out reminders here and there. Keep your pedals flat. Make sure you're covered, the brakes are covered. Why are you sitting on your seat when you're going down a hill and hitting the turn? It's just, it's constant coaching. It's constant coaching.
And then one thing that's not listed here that I kind of just remembered that I wish I would have thrown in as a bullet is having consistent rides set up, and that's kind of part of the planning, right? So like Nick mentioned, his practices are already all in SI play through the end of the season. So with that, the dates are already all set, and all the parents and riders and coaches know that, hey, we're always going to be having practice on this night or this day. We're always going to be pre-riding the course on this day, wherever the trail is going to be. So it's kind of already set up ahead of time. And so being consistent with that is one of the main things I would say for ride planning, is to make sure that your dates and times and locations are very consistent to the parents and to the coaches, so that way there's no confusion and the parents know that this thing is going to be around in 4 weeks because the stuff is scheduled and we know we're going to have it in 4 weeks. And I think when they see that consistency, they want to get more involved, and they're willing to actually give back a little bit and volunteer some too, because they know that they're going to be here then and all that stuff. Okay, so now moving on to the actual ride. I think we've talked about a lot of actual what happens on the ride as well, but those are things we all had to kind of plan for. So as far as when the ride is happening, first everyone's going to get there, and we have to do something. So do you want to go ahead and cover this one first, Nick?
As far as what we do, no, I can't give too much away because things are top secret.
Just for the procedures on arrival.
The procedures on arrival. What we do is, we show up. I pull out. I have a sign-in sheet there, and the students know that they need to sign in. I have a student grab the nameplates. They hand those plates out. Once they have their plates on their bikes, they are to find a partner and do their bike check with the partner. And I try to mix them up because we have kindergartners through seniors, so I try to mix them up a little bit. Have the seniors or the older kids work with the younger kids and so on, so that they get to know each other a little bit. And then once they go through that, we meet in our groups, and then we do a group stretch. And if we need to go over any skills for that day, we would do that at that time. And then we would go through our ride. Probably that takes about 30 minutes from arrival to by the time we're ready to go.
Okay, and then TJ, and I think Nick, you have something to add to this too, but as far as maintaining how many riders you have and how many coaches are on the course, so when you're, that everybody's in, kind of what's the best practice there?
Yeah, we do a similar situation to Nick. We have a sign-in sheet. It used to be we'd have every rider just sign in the sheet and then make sure they sign out, and then we do a sheet check and make sure that we didn't miss anybody and need to send out a search and rescue party to find a rider who went off the trail somewhere and is still out in the woods. And thank God that hasn't happened yet. But the accountability around that check-in, check-out is important. It's important to the whole event. So they and this has evolved. They used to just write their name and initial a checkout or or indicate how many miles they rode. We now have a list of all the riders with their names in the various groups, and they initial themselves in and initial themselves out, which makes it a little bit easier to kind of do a visual check and figure out how many riders we have in each group and what kind of coach support we need for each group as it gets formed up. And then again, the coach count. And I think Nick's use of SI Play there with respect to keeping track of the coaches is a great idea. I might have to introduce that. But, you know, I'm kind of old school. We've been doing the email and Facebook thing for a few years now, and introducing the third technology is a little bit reticent to do that and make sure we keep it up. But we'll see. But the bike checks, the same thing. We do the ABCs, check the tires, air in the tires, and make sure the brakes are working, make sure the drivetrain is working, chain is intact, and it's amazing what some of the student riders will show up with and the kind of work that needs to be done on it before they can actually roll out. Sometimes we get some real challenges, but for the most part, those get captured and dealt with offline, and we do the same thing where we take some more senior riders and some of the intermediate riders and more junior rider and get a threesome set up so that each one checks each other's bike, and so they have some conversation around that, and it's a good social mix as well. We try to kind of break them out of their cliques a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I like that because then you have different riders looking at different bikes too, and that I don't know if that was Nick or TJ earlier that said that when kids get together they start talking about their bikes and what's going on there, so that would kind of take away some of that where they're talking about all these different things they have and what's going on, but also it gets them to understand different bikes and different components that different bikes have, so they're learning that part of the thing as well. But also, I might see something on your bike that you didn't see just because it's always been there, or it's always that little knocking that you've always heard. So I think that's pretty important to have somebody else actually look at your bike versus me checking it every time right before I ride.
Yep. Cool. So for me, on the return, as I do the nameplate, and then I give them a number, just numerical order from when they signed up, and then when they come back, I have a student collect them, put them in order, and then just go through the numbers. And like right now, we have 35 number plates, so 35 went out. There should be 35 that come in. So it's just a really quick glance through those number plates and count them up, and if we got all of them, we know we're not missing anyone.
And that's
how we do our returns.
And the big thing about that is because you're using kind of the reusable number plate, you can hand them out and then get them back every time. And the big part of that is getting them back so that you can reuse them again, but also so that you got everybody. So it's kind of a dual purpose.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a good tip there too, because I know with the coaches sometimes moving between groups and the student athletes moving up and down between groups, everybody getting to know each other's names is sometimes a challenge, and having their names on their nameplates and on bikes would certainly be helpful in that area. And also for feedback, coach comes back and says, hey, I had this one rider and this happened, or they need to really work on this, or they're way too fast for our group, you need to move them up, or
Mm-hmm. And I've got some ideas there too, and it's not really part of this, but as far as having some plates that we can give out to the different teams so that they can keep track of who is there and getting to know their players, but also the coaches too, because sometimes it's hard to maintain, okay, which of these coaches is a level 2 coach, which one's a level 1, which one signed up to be a level 2, but they haven't done their first aid yet, that kind of thing. So if I could just, give everybody, here's some coach plates, here's some rider plates, and maybe some like first aid stickers or something like that. We have those at my office where, if you're first aid certified, you get a little sticker next to your name on your nameplate for your office or your desk. And that way, we have like 10 people in the office who are first aid certified or CPR certified. So that way, if something happens, they know who to go to or who to grab to be your buddy if something does go down. But I think that'd be good, and that's a good idea. It's something we can implement for next year.
Yeah, and also the coaches, they have their names on nameplates as well, so the kids know who they are as well too. So so we do that as well. Coaches and kids get their names on nameplates.
All right, TJ, how about route selection?
Yeah, just a couple things there, route selection and sessioning, maybe in skills agenda. Once the coaches and groups are assigned, then the coaches in the group will have a conversation about, let me back up one step here. When the group is all together, before we split up, when all the riders are together, we usually have a safety reminder about, trail crossings, road crossings, and such. Reminders on, make sure you're calling back to the rider behind you if it's clear or if there's a car or something like that, because we do have some road crossings in the trail systems that we ride in. So safety is certainly a key, and you probably should have mentioned it should be a bullet there. But route selection, yeah, we have the coaches and the group of riders that they have a conversation about what it is they'd like to do that day, what it is they'd like to ride that day. Hot days and cool days, the riders have different aspirations as to what it is they'd like to do. We ride the Island Lake trails on Tuesdays and the Brighton Recreation trails on Thursdays, and the various groups, will choose different segments of the trail or different loop that they'll want to do based on how they feel that day or what their aspirations are, if they want to focus on cardio or focus on skills. And so on that, on the skills area, there's a couple pieces in each of these trails that are a bit challenging, and some of the less experienced riders are often off their bike in order to get through that and catch up with the rest of their group, and we'll have some sessioning of those areas at times where the whole group will stop. We'll talk about that particular area of the trail or that feature or the texture of the trail and how you can choose a line and where the different lines are and what the advantages of one line and a different line is. And those conversations vary, again, depending on the skill of the rider, and how to get over a route or over a log or ride a drop properly. And we might do that section over and over again until the riders are comfortable with it and then can accomplish it. And we might work, sometimes we work that into the skills agenda too, in terms of, getting a log over or something like that. I've got a couple boards and a 4x4, and even before we go out on the trail, we usually have some open grassy area that we gather in, and we might have the students do a little skills test, lofting the front wheel up over the log and getting the rear wheel back up over it, and do some of that over and over again. Because that's exactly kind of the same kind of stuff they experience out on the trail.
Yeah, nothing really different there. Steve Kinley and I meet once a week, and we just kind of review our week in advance so that we know kind of what we want to do with the kids for that following week. And I think it's important that you mix it up. We have rail trails here. We have some easier parks that we can go to with the big grassy areas, 2-track areas, some hill climbs, and the skill repeats. Yeah, exactly the same. So I do think that you should go in with a plan so that the kids kind of know that you're somewhat competent with what you're doing with them. And I mean, it shows them that there's no arguing that way. with them. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going. Now, when it comes down to the different levels, we'll shorten it for the elementary kids. We'll talk about, we'll have a map out of the park we're going to, or the trail system we're using, and take your kids, instead of going 4 to 5, go point 4 to point 3, take them around that way. So we do have those discussions too, and it's just there's a lot involved with biking. It's not as easy as any of the other sports, for sure.
And then one thing I know TJ mentioned, safety, kind of as a bullet point we're missing. In the SI Play system now, we have emergency contact information and allergies and that kind of thing in there. Is that something that you guys are utilizing now in your teams to make sure that the information is available to the coaches, like that are with that group of riders, or do you keep that with the head coach, or how does that work?
What's really good is you can print that off, and then instead of having to make 20 copies, all you need to really do is have your coaches take a picture of each of those pages on their phones, so that they can have that information right there in handy if they need it, instead of trying to dig through a backpack or trying to find it on their person, when they can just go on their phone and it's right there.
Yeah, I use the same system. We've got a list of all the rider names and contact numbers, and even the coach names and contacts, and that was sent out, available for use on a phone or whatever their favorite device is.
Their Dell Zoom, or whatever those were used to be called. Or is that Microsoft Zoom? Okay, so what about, I think we pretty much covered those 3 bullets. What about procedures on departure?
Yeah, on the departure, making sure everybody signs out, that's, probably the most important thing. A lot of the coaches like to do a recap with the group they were with, and, talk about what went well, what they, maybe improve on next time. We've been trying to get institutionalized a little stretching routine for after the ride, but it's been a bit of a challenge. All the groups kind of finish at different times, and once they finish and signed out, then they're free to go. So parents and waiting in the lots. And
other than checking them out with their name tags, nameplates, I'm a little lacking in that department. I'm trying to figure out a good way to end practice. So if anybody has any good ideas out there, I'd love to hear them, for sure. But once we get back, like TJ said, it's one group's there already, one group's coming in. Half of them are loading their bikes up, ready to go. So it's just kind of disheveled in the end. So there's a good there's a good way to end practice with a group hurrah, ready, team break, something like that. I'm open to suggestions.
Well, cool. Well, we'll leave that open at the end in the Q&A. Not the end, but the end of this segment. So if you do have any ideas out there in the world, type them in. But I do know that one of the things that is important is to make sure you do have like a beginning, so a procedure, your arrival, and having that everyone coming together and having something that they're doing at the beginning before they ride, having your ride, and then having some kind of recap or some process that happens at the end. So it's not just, hey, I get off the trail and I put my bike on my car and I leave. So to make sure that there is something happening after the ride, it doesn't have to be all together like, 30 people. But, even if it is a group stretch, just with the group that just rode, make sure that coach knows, hey, take 5 minutes and stretch it out after you guys get back, just so that there is a clear end to the ride. And it just doesn't seem like, okay, yeah, we're done now. I think that's important. And the last one is attendance and student accountability. I'll let you take this one, Nick.
It's really hard to take attendance. Not hard to take it, but to have student athletes show up to every practice because it is summertime, and I don't know any other sport that goes throughout the whole entire summer. And there are vacations, and there are other practices going on at the time. So I don't really hold them accountable for attendance as far as being at practice, but I do hold them accountable, and it's a trust thing with riding when they're not here. So one thing that I do have is a team Strava that they can go on so that I can see that they're riding. I don't make it mandatory. I do suggest it so that that I can see that they are indeed riding. But that's one of the things that I do stress, and when they are, or if they're going to miss practice, or if they're away, is that they really should consider riding on their off time.
Yeah, we use the same format, Team Strava, and encourage the athletes to use that, so that they can be recognized for the riding they're doing outside of the regular club rides. And it's a good social environment where they can give kudos to one another and see how they progress in their own performance. And so in that respect, it's good. But we don't enforce it either. It's really optional.
Yeah, it's just too difficult in the summertime to do that. And things they don't think about when they're going away. They tell you they're going to be gone for 2 weeks. Going away on vacation, well, you're going to ride. Well, I can't take my bike. Well, go to the local bike shop. See if if they have any loaners that they can give you, if they can point you in the direction of the trail. It's giving them suggestions too. If you're in a hotel, hit the exercise bike for an hour and a half. So holding them accountable for, even though you're on vacation, you're still a part of this group, and you need to be held accountable and do your part with keeping up with the workload. So.
And I think most of us, when we travel, who are into biking at least, want to find somewhere to bike or want to do those things. So it's kind of creating that habit too for those kids, that when you go somewhere, usually, you are trying to look for somewhere to ride that's cool, because you're never going to be there again, or you don't go there very often.
Right.
All right.
I'm always impressed by the families that I see that are taking their bikes on vacation and posting up their rides. And, actually some of them take biking vacations and go out of state or, northern Michigan. And it's just terrific to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the last slide of this section with TJ and Nick is kind of additional ideas. So we've kind of been through, planning for a ride, doing the ride. This is more, other things that you can do to kind of make the team dynamic and to make it more fun and exciting for the kids versus, showing up to practice, that kind of thing. So I'll let you start, TJ, with the new Rider Induction.
Yeah, so we try and we have a regular routine when we have new riders to assess their skills and kind of sort out what their experience is in terms of trail riding. And even if they've had a lot of experience trail riding, they may not have good skills that support that experience, and so we assess those. We try and do our new rider inductions only on one day. It's a bit disruptive to, peel off a coach or two in order to handle new student athletes that show up. And so we try and do that on our Tuesday rides at Island Lake. But, throughout the cycling season, we have students that hear about the club through friends, or oftentimes the high school principals having conversations with parents when students are joining, and he's making suggestions as to the clubs they consider. And he's a mountain biker himself, Gavin Johnson, so oftentimes he'll kind of steer them our way. And we get inquiries, throughout the season. Once we get into the race season, it's a little more difficult to kind of pull new riders in. I won't say that we haven't done it, but oftentimes, we won't necessarily pull them into the race program in the middle of the race season, but have them come out and do some of the practices with us, and then look forward to seeing them at the next season.
We don't really have that much experience. This is only our second year with new kids coming out, but this year it was more along the lines of, well, if you're going to join the team, I would prefer you have some kind of experience. Otherwise, kind of the same thing. Come out for next spring for the skills part, the skills club, and then we'll go from there. So that's been my kind of view on it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky in the sense that we've got 7 different groups, and even a brand new rider can join into our novice group and and be okay in that session or that group. Sometimes there's a significant age mismatch, but you got to start somewhere.
That's what they really don't like. TJ, do you do elementary at all?
We do have some. I guess the preference, put it out there, is that it's middle school and up. If we have parents that want their elementary school riders to participate in the club, I encourage them to come out and ride with their children and participate. And yeah, we've got a few.
Okay. Yeah, because we had one boy. He was just on skill level. He kind of tested out with the elementary kids, and he was an 8th grader, and he didn't want any part of it, so he kind of dropped off.
Yeah, that can happen.
So yeah, I was just wondering what your take was on that.
Okay. Nick, what about ideas on getting to know the kids?
Getting to know the kids, I've tried to do after our stretch before we ride is to get them just to do an icebreaker. And you can look them up online, quick 5-minute icebreakers, and get them talking to each other, because a lot of times they don't have time to talk to each other because they're riding, so they don't really get to know each other. So, it can be something as easy as, what's your most favorite topping on a pizza to least favorite topping on a pizza. Turn and talk to your neighbors. High schoolers talk to the elementary kids. Mix it up that way, just to get them to talk to each other. And then in that time, you can go around and kind of talk to them and share your ideas and thoughts on it too. And it doesn't take long to do. Just a quick, icebreaker to get them talking. That's one of the things that we do.
Yeah, formalizing that process is good. I have actually the opposite issue where the kids are all talking to one another and try and get their attention to get things kicked off.
And I try to break because it's always the clicky groups, like you said. I try to break those cliques by having like the elementary talk to the big kids and those kinds of things. And that's the challenge. It's trying to get them out of their norms and out of their groups. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
Okay, and then
the other thing I think we both.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You're good. I was going to move on to the next one, so go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say we probably both do just times to hang out outside of practice. Fun things, I guess you could say. Like we have potluck scheduled, and I want to take the kids to the velodrome and those kinds of things, just for them to have fun. Movie days, matinees. I'm open to suggestions for more things too. Like to hear from other people and what they do.
Yeah, this might go more into the fun things, but I know that I saw you guys have your Facebook page, so I see things on there too. Like one of the rides, it was planned that you were going to end the ride at like an ice cream stand or something like that.
Right.
So that was kind of like the end point.
Yep. Ice cream rides, group rides with the local bike shop. You meet at the brew pub and then head out and then head back and out and back. So, yeah, just easy riding, things where they can get to ride next to each other and talk to each other.
And then TJ, I think you utilize the student-athlete captains as part of your, I don't know the word.
Yeah,
organization.
we encourage them to, to apply to a captain's position at the end of each season, before our banquet, we have a team-wide banquet at the end of the season, and we announce who the captains are going to be and go over the awards. We keep ourselves aligned with the school as an elastic team, and that way we are blessed by the high school and the athletic director there and the principal. They allow us to letter the kids as a athletic sport, even though we're not a sponsored MHSAA sport. The students can earn their varsity letter when they're in high school, and that's worked out great. I've even had a couple students that ride with us on a regular basis from schools outside of Brighton, and liaise with their school administration, and they've been lettered, which has been really great for them and actually the whole mountain biking program here to be able to spread that joy.
Yeah, we're trying. I'm working on that lettering process for us too. So I'm crossing my fingers.
Yeah. Well, you gotta lay out what the rules are. For our students, they have to finish 75% of the races. So if it's 3 out of 4 or 5 out of 6, they've got to finish 75% of them in order to get lettered, and there's an attendance requirement there as well. So,
okay. Well, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit more at another time about
Sure.
that. But did you say at the end of your banquet, at the end of the season, you pick your captains for the following year?
We announce the captains for the following year. Yep. At the end of season banquet, and they send a communication out to the group and say, if anybody is interested in being a captain, please send in a short essay as to why it is that you think you would be good for the team as a captain.
And then TJ, actually,
do you
I think Nick's going to ask the same question. How do you choose the captains?
Based on their essay, based on how they interact with the team members, is how they become a captain. It's not a performance-oriented appointment. It is totally more social in terms of the captain selection. And as I mentioned, trying to spread it out, so we have a captain from each of the various grades. So somebody that comes in as a sophomore and becomes a captain keeps that position through the end of their high school career, and then as our senior captains roll off, they get replaced.
Okay, that's cool.
And then as far as lettering goes, do you have any criteria? Like, what's your criteria? You said 75%. You have to finish 75% of the races, and then there's an attendance requirement. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, finishing the races is important. We've had some students that have busted their chain and couldn't finish. One student actually is maybe derailleur bent or something. He couldn't pedal it. He could coast downhill, but he couldn't pedal it uphill. So he ran his bikes up the hills and coasted down them at Canonsburg in order to get credit for the race and finished it. So it's that kind of incentive that they get in order to achieve their letter awards, and it's the school that provides them. I submit a list of the candidates to the school, and the principal reviews it. The athletic director provides the letters, and then they get a certificate and the letter at the awards banquet. And then some of them have multi-year letters where they're recognized for more than 1 year for mountain biking.
Great. Okay. Well, that takes.
But it's just for the high school.
Yeah. That takes into communication. Then I'll take it back to you, TJ, since this was your bullet point as well.
Yeah, the communication. I kind of already covered it. We've been over the past few years using Facebook and email regularly, and just starting to get into leverage SI Play and see what some of the capabilities are there. The email and Facebook allows us to reach out and touch not only the riders and the coaching staff, sport people, but also sometimes the extended families. We call them the crews and fans also get the same communication. So, and regular communication is important. The more you communicate, the more communication you get back. People forget what day it is during the summer and which location the practice is at, and so those communications are important. And even when they do get the communication that comes out the day of or the day before practice, some of them show up at the wrong venue.
And that's what I was going to add when you mentioned that we've kind of already covered communication, was that it's just, again, being consistent no matter what mode of communication you choose, whether it's Facebook, email, SI Play, that, again, you're consistent, and, at least there's always one place they can look to get, what's happening. Anything to add to that, Nick? We're pretty good.
No, before this I used, last year we were fumbling around with a way to communicate, and we've tried different apps, and nothing seemed to be easy. I do use, it's called Remind. It's a text message system. I use it with in my classroom, and it's really easy to. It's a 5-digit number that you type in, and you give them a code, and they type in the code in the message box, and they're literally signed up to get your text messages. So, it's super fast and easy to use, and that's called Remind, and it's an app. It's a text messaging app, and parents absolutely love it. In fact, they said I told them I was going to start transitioning to SI Play from Remind, and they kind of were upset because of how easy Remind was. So I said, it'll be a slow process. If you're not really up with the SI Play, that might be a good alternative.
All right, well, that takes into kind of the fun stuff then. And this one came from TJ as far as like some content to add. So I'll let you go ahead and take that, TJ.
Sure. Yeah, so, each year after one or two of the practices, we'll have a picnic. We're organizing something special this year, the 4th of August, doing a group ride with Huron Valley United and doing a picnic out at DTE Trail, kind of introduce some of the kids to a new trail and have a picnic afterwards. So doing things like that, kind of off the bike activities, social experiences is great for kids, also great for the parents. They get to, spend time getting to know one another in advance of the race season, where they're going to see a lot of each other. We did something fun a few weeks ago. We did a relay, and this was again a little social thing. We took the groups and organized them from the most advanced all the way down to the least advanced. Had them count off, and then we did 3-person relay teams. So an advanced rider would be with an intermediate rider, which would be with a novice rider, and they'd have to decide who was going to go first in the relay, and who's going to go second and third. And we just had a short course. It was just a small piece of the Appleton Loop, and ran it out of the baseball field. And the kids had a lot of fun with that. So you didn't know who you were going to get on your team, and so you had to interact with these other kids. You had to make some decisions with them, and have a little relay race. And the winner wasn't the one who had finished. The winner was the one who had observed or executed the most sportsmanship-like action while they were out in the race. So they had recognition for good passing and somebody making room for another rider. So
Nice.
And then the bike blessing, whenever a kid shows up with a new bicycle, new to them bicycle, there's a lot of hand-me-downs that go on through the cycling team. So any bike that is new to the rider, be it a new bike or a used bike that they just acquired, we have a bike blessing. That's one of the duties of the captains. They have a little thing, and they and a special wand for the bike blessing.
Can you explain that? That sounds fun.
Explain it?
Yeah, like what?
Well, we when we recognize that one of the kids has a new to them bicycle, they need to come to the front of the group, and the whole group gets around, and then the captains, trying to remember what they say. I think it's bless us thee and thy new bike through many trails and no more hikes, I think it is. And they wave this. I think it's a piñata stick that they use to kind of wave over the rider of the bike.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and everybody gives a whistle and a clap, and even the coaches that show up with a new to them bike get the same treatment.
Same treatment. Okay, that's cool.
I bet there's some bike shops would steal that idea. Marketing gimmick. All right, well, that takes us into the Q&A section, I think, and we can always, kind of veer off into some other topics too. I definitely did want to share Coach TJ and Coach Nick's email addresses, so if you do have questions or, throughout the season, you're like, hey, how can I do this, or what do you do when this happens? These would be good resources to reach out to for at least 2 of the teams in the area. And I just want to make a quick note before we get into the Q&A. Don't leave. There's still more to come after these questions. I have some kind of housekeeping to do with MiSCA stuff that I want to make sure we get through some changes since the last webinar so that you're aware of. So one thing that we had come in, Lara from Detroit Country Day, she mentioned what they do at the end of a practice, and I have to get to my questions box. Sorry. So what they do is they all circle up at the end of the practice, and they share what was the best part of today's ride, accomplishments of the day, something learned, etc. So they do it as a whole group because they're always all together, not necessarily on the trail all together, but as far as coming and going to the trail. But that could definitely be done in smaller groups as well.
Okay.
But it's definitely a clear ending to the ride, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Got it. Wrote it down.
So, of course, right now, questions are open. If you do have any, go ahead and feel free to type them into the questions box of GoToWebinar. We can't hear you talk, so if you're yelling, hey, can you hear me? I can't hear you, and it won't tell me you're talking. So you definitely have to type those in. in order for us to talk about them.
I'm sure we've been so thorough. There are no questions.
So Lara did ask also the relay race, how are kids matched up? So I think, TJ, you went into that a little bit, and you kind of said it was by kind of the group level of skill level that they're in, but then you try to get a mix on each team. Is that correct?
Right. So we took the groups and we put one line of kids. We had them all line up from by the color, the most advanced colors at one end and the most novice color at the opposite end, and had them count off. I think we had 7 groups of, no, we had maybe 9 groups of 3. So they started off counting 1 to 9 and then started again 1 to 9 and started the third time 1 to 9. And then we took the 1s together and the 2s together and the 3s together and grouped them that way. So they really didn't know who they were going to be paired with, and it was a lot of fun. You know, and then we had each of those groups. We had 9 groups of 3 riders, all having conversations about how they're going to run their relay and
strategy.
And it worked out good. Yeah, strategy. You know, so when it started, we didn't have all of the advanced riders starting because some of them decided they were going to have the least advanced riders start and the advanced rider finish. So you had a big mix of 9 different students with all different capabilities starting all at the same time, and they quickly spread out. And then there was some passing that occurred as the event went on. I think it took maybe a half hour to do the whole thing, or maybe 40 minutes. It was fun.
And I think that's cool too. And I think what I've heard from a few of the slides is getting kids to talk to each other that wouldn't normally talk to each other. And so the kid who's like, super fast varsity might not talk a whole lot to, the 5th or 6th grader who's just starting up unless, they're put together into a group. I think it's good to have that forced interaction.
Yep.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in, so if you do have more, feel free to type them in and we'll get to them. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into the housekeeping MiSCA stuff because I don't want it to go too much longer than what it already has. So let me jump over here. Hi, I'm Sean again. Okay, so some announcements and reminders for the season. The races, the start times are swapped this year. So in previous years, we always started with elementary at 10 a.m. This year, we're starting with varsity at 10 a.m. So make sure your parents and people know that. If they're used to getting there at noon, they need to get there a little bit earlier this year in order to get to the race on time or for their race to start on time. We're doing leaders jerseys this year. That's thanks to Primal. They're one of our new sponsors. And what will happen is at the award ceremony at every race, we'll award, top 5 of every category. And in addition to that, we will calculate our series standings at that moment and award a yellow jersey to the series leader at that time. If they already have the jersey from the previous race, they'll just keep the jersey. Regardless if they're the leader or not, if they have been a leader throughout the entire year at all, they will get to keep their jersey. They'll just be asked not to wear it to the next race if they're no longer the leader. But they'll get to keep it. It's theirs to keep. So we don't have to worry about getting them back and washing them or anything like that. So that'll be really cool, something new. In addition to that, one thing is that the award ceremony is going to be one big award ceremony at the end of the day. We're not going to do again, before it used to be elementary and middle school awards during the varsity race, and then we would do a varsity awards, at the end of the varsity race. We want it to be, a nice big event. Everyone's having fun. Everyone's cheering everybody on. And in order to do that, everyone kind of needs to be there in order for that to happen. And it's been a consistent kind of concern over the years that, a lot of people aren't there for the awards when, the kind of our most elite riders are being recognized. And so we want to make sure that we have everybody around to recognize everybody. And I think that'll be a really cool moment when we see how big we actually are all at the same time. New this year is the coaches race, and also we're going to have a balance bike race. So the coaches race is going to be at Lakeshore Park. That race is September 30th. I opened up registration today on SI Play for that, so you do not have to pay anything as a coach. So spread this around to your coaches. It's going to be a free race. It's really for fun. Obviously, there's going to be some competitive coaches out there, and feel free to race their hearts out. Go ahead, but it's really just for fun, and it's not going to be any big deal. One lap at Lakeshore Park of our normal race course for the varsity kids that'll be doing. So it's like a 5.5 mile loop. So it'll probably add on an extra half hour, 45 minutes to our day to do that. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. In addition to the coaches having fun with it, the kids are really going to get a kick out of it. And that's what I witnessed when I was in Washington, that it was all about the kids, the coaches race, which is, you think that's backwards, but it's totally true. The kids become, the people cheering you on, and it's just a lot of fun. And feel free to come in costumes or whatever you want to do. Just keep it clean. As far as the balance,
we need some different classes in that coaches race. I can tell that right now.
There's also going to be a balance bike race, so this will just be at Canonsburg. One thing that's really awesome that they do over on the west side of the state that we need to get a little better about on this side is they have a really good balance bike community going with the Dirt Dogs and some other programs that they have. And Trevor said he's really good about it too with Norte. So we're going to have our first ever balance bike race at Canonsburg. They're kind of used to running them there, so we're going to kind of learn from them a little bit. It should be
Now, Sean?
Yeah.
Is that also a coach's race? I'd like to sign up for that one.
I didn't put an age cap on it, but maybe now I should. But no, it should only take about 15 minutes after the elementary kids are finished, and they're just going to kind of ride through our start-finish area, a short, nice little loop, so that we can all cheer them on before our awards ceremony. So our coaches clinics are over for the year. I don't think we're going to do any more. So if you didn't get in this year, no worries. I don't know if you know, but we took away the requirement for level 2 coaches this year to have the coaching clinic, and that's because we found it hard to offer enough clinics for everybody, and that's just as far as volunteer bandwidth goes. It just wasn't possible for us to fit everybody in after we had to cancel the one in April, because we had 30 coaches registered for the April clinic that got canceled in Novi. So doing them in smaller chunks, we just couldn't do it. So and plus you guys needed to start your practices in May, and there was just no way to get everybody through. So that's one update. But the next update is that next year they're probably going to be totally different anyways. So so they'll be we might split them up into 2 different days, maybe do half day chunks. We got a lot of feedback from the coaches on kind of the content and the feedback that we were giving them and what they want to see. And I think a lot of coaches want to see more help with how to coach versus here's some mountain biking skills and here's how to lead a ride. They also kind of want more of the interaction with how do I work with kids, or lesson plans, and how do I develop this team and things like that. So we may have some different types of clinics next year based on the type of demand or the need within the community. Some current numbers for the year. I've been reporting it back to the MiSCA board and kind of our race staff, but right now I had planned for 50 coaches, and we are at 112 coaches for the year. So when I gave our insurance company our numbers for the year, I said, okay, we're going to have 300 kids and 50 coaches, and that was kind of my baseline. It's kind of based on last year. We never had coach registration before, and we never really counted how many parents were riding or kids or adults riding with our kids. It's a lot more than what we thought. And so it's really awesome. We have 112 registered adults with MiSCA. That includes 6 board members, but for the most part, those are all volunteer coaches on teams. And then what also is an interesting number is we have 206 riders who are registered currently. That's through the annual registration. So we have about 90 kids registered for the race series in one way or another as well at this point. but so last year we had about 300 unique kids total for the year, and this year we're at 206 at the moment. And so I think we should be about there again with our new structure and everything. We expect it to be a little bit down, but it looks like things should be pretty good. And right now we're at, so that total is 318 total kind of participants in MiSCA, whether you're a coach or a rider. And I had planned 350 for the entire year. So we have to go back to the insurance company. I'm already in talks to up our numbers because we're going to have to. But that's really good. And I think the rider numbers will come up too, because a lot of the riders don't ride on teams. And so we're not capturing them at all yet, and we don't normally capture them at all until races start. So we'll be hearing from them soon. As soon as they realize, they're like, what's this new system? That's when we'll hear from them. So we have some additions to the MiSCA race staff. So in previous years, it's been Lisa, myself, Merlin, and Jody Giles in various roles. So Lisa sets up our course, and she's kind of like the one person who's in charge of the course the day before and the day of. Myself, I'm kind of the all-around kind of the race director for the day. Merlin sets up kind of the infield area, and he doesn't really leave the start-finish area too much. He helps us get the waves going and things like that. And then Jody, last year she did volunteer and registration on race day. So we're splitting the volunteer and registration into two positions. So we'll have a registration coordinator this year. Sarah Vano is going to be that person, and then Jody will maintain as our volunteer coordinator. Because what we found is as we've been increasing our volunteer numbers to 20 or 30 people per race, that's a lot to manage in addition to the regular race registration happening too. One change with race registration is this year, because we're in the SI Play system, we're going to be giving out, well, I guess it's not because of that, but we're doing one number plate per rider for the entire year. So once we give those out to the coaches will distribute them at the first race. And then they'll keep those for the entire year. It's encouraged that the coaches collect those plates at the end of every race so that they maintain their quality and they don't get blown off on somebody's car or something like that, because obviously they're going to have RFID chips on there that we don't want to get ruined or broken or anything like that. So so that's really going to help our registration and to help out that kind of the flow of the day. That's going to be nice. And then last on this list, but definitely not least, is Jim Davis is also joining our race staff as our chief course marshal. So we're going to have somebody there every race who's ridden the course before, has placed where course marshal is going to be on the course, who's in charge of safety, and they're going to stay in the infield throughout the entire race day. So if anything happens, they're kind of our liaison between the EMS and the coaches or riders or whoever got injured. As well as filling out the forms and stuff like that to maintain, that stuff with our insurance. But really what they're in charge of is the communication and coordination of all these volunteers to make sure that we're all focused on the same thing and we all know what our job is on race day, which, we're all in charge of safety, really. But what's really cool about our races this year especially is we're going to have like 50 people there that are first aid CPR certified. Which is going to be awesome, probably overkill for any other event, but because a lot of our coaches and parents are going to be there who have been through the training and things like that, we're going to be really covered when it comes to safety. And then one thing I just wanted to point out one more time, just to make sure it's very clear to all the coaches that are on the call or parents, is that riders, in order to race in our race series this year, they have to join MiSCA using the annual registration. So the system, and it's been an issue, but the system will let you register for a race, a single race, or the entire series without having registered for the annual fee, which is $50. You have to register for MiSCA in order to register for a race as far as our system goes. So I will be reaching out to parents who have registered their kids for a single race or the series who have not done the annual leading up to the race. And then when they come to pick up their plate, or we'll hold their plate if they missed out on the annual part, just to make sure that we have everything covered. We'll make sure that we get to them. And I'm working on that list now. Most of the list that I'm seeing is actually it's volunteers who have registered, but they registered for the wrong event. So I'm just working through that. And I do have a question that came in, so let me just double check that. Okay, it looks like it wasn't a question. It's just still blinking at me from earlier. Okay, so if you were at the kickoff event, then you've already seen this information about the new MiSCA rules, as well as it's been posted on Facebook and it's been in an email, but I just want to make sure, because I know that kind of our most dedicated coaches are on this call, that I give the information to you directly, and share the information with your teams and parents. And I'm going to blow through this really quick, no explanations. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in, but I don't want to hold us any longer than we need to. But again, students, teams, and coaches must register with MiSCA in order to be part of the program, in order to race, in order to ride with kids. Coaches have to register. Teams, in order to have any kind of team scoring or points tallied, you have to be part of MiSCA at the races. We're doing series scoring based on the best 5 of 6 finishes this year because we have 6 races. We're dropping your slowest race or a race you couldn't make, and we'll take your best 5 of the 6. And you have to start in at least 4 races to qualify for series awards, which before it was 3 because we only had 5. So the numbers have kind of just moved up a little bit to make sure you're doing more of the series in order to have series standing. We're moved from co-ed to gender split classes for elementary. So what that means is now lower and upper elementary, which were split last year in the 2 categories, will now be 4 total categories, 1 for boys, 1 for girls, 1 for boys, 1 for girls, upper and lower. And no matter what, our lower and our upper are going to be doing the same course all the time. And that's because what we found is we kind of assumed that, okay, a 5th grader can do more than a kindergartner, but when it comes to skill level and endurance, that's not necessarily the case. And a lot of times these are beginner kids who it might be their first year on a bike. And so we want to make sure that we're treating the elementary class as a beginner category, no matter which grade group you're in. And because of that, there's no racing up from lower to upper elementary because we're not seeing lower to upper as a different skill level, more as a break in age, just to kind of break up the groups. We added a middle school advanced category. They're basically doing the same as JV. My hope was that we could do like 1 less lap than JV, but we've been kind of unable with the race courses that we have to find where that works without them basically doing less than what the novice and regular middle school are doing. So they're basically this year they're doing the same as JV at every course that we've put out so far. We added a Safe Kids program and policies and also a coach certification requirement, which everyone on this call should know about. But these are all in our rules now, like actually documented. We added a concussion policy, and we also defined a process for transgender students that basically says that if your team recognizes the student as a specific gender, then that's the gender that we would recognize them as well. Okay, some of the other rules. This is the last slide of rule changes before I lose you all. The call-up process now scales with the field size. So before we were actually doing this, but it just wasn't in our rules. And it also allows for assigning rows. So we may assign a row for every 5 kids so that we have a clear definition of every 5 riders as it goes throughout the series standings. We're probably not going to do that unless it comes to like a really big class, like maybe JV, where it can get a little dicey in there at the start. And we want to get a little bit more separation or a little bit more definition. We added a requirement for mixed gender team scoring. This is new as well. So we want to make sure every team has at least 1 girl or at least 1 boy when it comes to your team scoring. So we're still taking the top 4 riders, but you must have 1 of each gender within that top 4 or in that 4 rider group. We also added middle school team scoring, so it'll be the same idea, but now the middle school riders will actually compete for awards as well. And all middle school teams will be considered composite. So if you have 3 different schools in your district, then that's fine. They'll all compete as 1 school or 1 team underneath your district name. And that's how middle school will work. Let's see. All middle school categories will count for team scoring, so the advanced and the middle school will count. The way that we're doing this is, and that's the next bullet point, is that our series points table was revamped, and it now is scaling with category difficulty. So if you go to this MiSCAbike.org/MiSCA rules, you will see at the end of it in the appendix there is a different points scaling than we ever had before. But now, as if you're varsity, you earn more points than you do if you're JV, even if you both place first. So now maybe, I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but a 5th place varsity might be the same as a 1st place JV. I think it might be 10th place before it gets to be that close. I don't remember. But, you get the idea. So all categories are now going to count for series points in your respective grouping. And that means that novice is now going to count in your high school team scoring. We don't have an elementary team category right now. We might add that if it becomes needed in future years, but this year it wasn't really seen as a competitive category that we wanted to focus on the team aspect of things yet. And because of that revamped scaling, you can now carry your points up to different categories as you move up. So you're not going to only take up half your points, you can take up your entire points that you've earned. So if you go from JV to varsity, you're going to take all of your points with you, which is nice. Let's see. And then camera and video recording devices. We had a pretty strict no GoPro guideline last year, I think the last 2 years, and we're just kind of loosening that now to allow cameras as long as they're not on your helmet. And we're also saying that video cannot be used in a protest. So we don't want the reason why riders have cameras to be like they're driving in Russia and they have to prove what happened on the trail at what point, and that's just it'll just be chaos, and that's not what we want. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to share it and have some social impact and to be fun. And a lot of our riders do that already on their own, so we want to be able to share that with the races too. Okay, so some important dates to remember. 8/5, it's coming up fast. This is going to be, it was actually just extended. You're the first to hear about it. And you have to register with MiSCA in order to receive your custom nameplates. And so this is a task for your parents. You have to register in MiSCA and the SI Play app under the annual registration in order to receive that custom nameplate. And I had this question actually earlier today, so I'll make sure I'm clear with it. You only have to register for the annual part in order to receive the nameplate. We're not going to worry about everyone being registered for the race series as of yet because we know it's still a month away, and history tells us that people don't register until the last minute. So we're hoping that we can get most of the people who are going to register for the series their nice, cool custom nameplates. Even if they didn't go for the series yet, we'll be ready to go for them when they do register. 8/15 is going to be the deadline for financial aid and scholarships. We still have a few $1,000s available for scholarships for the year. We budgeted about $4,000 in registrations that we wouldn't be paid for, basically. So I would definitely encourage your kids to apply for financial aid, or their parents if they need it, if they're kind of wavering on the race series because it's expensive. Definitely have them fill out the application, and we haven't turned anybody away. So please do that. We have sponsors for a reason, and that's one of them. 9/15 is going to be the application due date for Student Advisory Committee. So these are your riders. They can do the application on their own. Their parent does need to sign off on it just as hey, yeah, I will support my child in this effort. But for the most part, that's kind of a rider initiative thing. It's kind of like applying to be the team captain. And then these, right now we have 4 riders on our committee, and they come to some of our board meetings and they help us kind of make some decisions. More than board meetings, we have an external tool as well called Workplace, which is a lot like Facebook. And they get to see all the posts that are happening, like as I'm making decisions for the t-shirt design right now, they're weighing in on that design so that we make sure it's something cool that the kids are going to want too. Something also new this year is that the online race registration is going to close the Friday before each race. I think that is consistent with previous years. It might have been Thursday night. I can't remember. It's going to be Friday this year. And the $10 discount, I think it was a $5 discount before, it's automatically going to be applied if you register 1 week early. So we're pushing people to get their registrations in the week before, which should basically be, if it's Sunday, it's race day, I need to register for the next race on that Sunday in order to get that discount. Day of registration and registration between that week will still be available, but you'll be paying the $10 price additional instead of it being the nice discount. And we did increase the day of, or the not early bird pricing this year, because the with the SI play system and how our insurance is this year, it's a lot more work and a lot more data that we need to collect from parents. So imagine someone shows up to their third race and they've never been to a race before and they didn't register with MiSCA at all. It's going to be a lot of paperwork and information they need to get to us and a lot of time and energy that's going to go into that. So we just want to discourage it as much as possible to have people do it online ahead of time. Okay, this should not be news to anybody, but this is the race series for the year. We do have the course maps for the first 5 races published. They're on the MiSCA website. Every event has their own page on the website. I think actually all the information is also in SI Play. It's also in Google Calendar. It's in Facebook. It's there's one other place it is, but I can't remember. But I had to update these things in a whole bunch of different places. So to kind of go to that communication point, there's a lot of people that get their information from different areas, and so I wanted to make sure it was clear. I'll be working on the course maps for Mid-Michigan pretty soon. We have it basically laid out already. It's just not there. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. I want to thank our sponsors. We couldn't do it at all without them. iDashboard specifically for letting us use their GoToWebinar. This license would cost us more than $1,000 a year. I think it's something like that. So they're letting us use theirs, and that's pretty awesome. Just a quick shout out to our top 3 sponsors, at least D&D Bicycles for sponsoring the entire race series as a whole, our pro level sponsor. And then we have Newton Timing and Psychotherapy, which are sponsoring 2 races. So Psychotherapy is sponsoring the Lakeshore Park race, and Newton Timing is sponsoring our state championship this year. So I want to thank everyone again for attending. There was no more questions that have come in since we answered the last ones. So if you do have any questions, please throw them in the GoToWebinar questions box. I'm pretty excited. Everybody actually stuck it through to the end. I can see if anybody drops off. So everyone stayed with it. I'm pretty excited. Here is the contact information. Again, if you have questions, feel free to email me, TJ, or Nick with those questions, or all 3 of us, if you just want to kind of get a group think going on. But no questions on any of the MiSCA stuff? I'm surprised.
Good.
All right, we're good. All right, well, thank you guys so much again. If you do have a question we didn't get to it, feel free to email us, and we'll hit that up offline. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for volunteering. I know there's actually, I don't think it ended up raining, did it? So it was actually good weather to be out, and you spent it with me, so we appreciate it. Thank you, TJ and Nick, as well, for working on the content and helping out today too.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, see you guys.
Okay, bye. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.